Welcome to episode number 367 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for all of you marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. You can find us by searching for Beyond Social Media Show. We are recording on November 20, 2021. A lot of things to talk about this week, including Twitter good bots, Amazon's Anamorphic Billboards, Atlantic newsletters, interview masterclass, Apple self-repair, WWF animation, Spotify adds video podcasts, TikTok's safety center, the long tradition of disinformation, rating media bias, and you want to stick around for some stats on childness being in. But before we go to that, we kick it off with the best story of the week as usual, and BL always has that honors. BL, what was the best story?
Well, I think this is an interesting story. I don't know if that's the best story, but Twitter has launched an experiment with good bots. So, when you think about bots, this is from the Twitter blog. When you think about bots, you think about the Russian, bot farms spreading misinformation during the election. And so Twitter is rolling out an experiment where they're going to label bots as automated. And there'll be an icon of a robot, but there'll also be a link to the Twitter handle of the person who created the bot. And, that's really an interesting thing. And they have good reason because Twitter detects roughly 25 million accounts per month that are suspected of being spam accounts or automated or spam accounts. So in the second half of 2020, it deployed 143 million anti-spam challenges to accounts, and people flagged tweets as spam, and they brought down the flagging of tweets as spam down by 18% in the first half of the year. And apparently they have like a whole enforcement team dedicated to tracking down these accounts and banning them. But, there's gazillions of people, so they're popping up all over the place. But Dante Clemens, who's the senior product manager who has to create this thing, said it's not inherently wrong to have an automated account on Twitter. Obviously, automated accounts don't have to be terrible. And there was a vaccine bot, for example, that was really popular in New York because it was so hard to get appointments to get your vaccine. And this would pop up and tell you where a testing site was had an available spot or where a vaccine site. So that was called TurboVax, and it tweeted vaccine appointments to 160,000 followers. And she said she looked at those accounts because they're ones that can help us reframe how we think about bots. So the labels don't call bots good or bad. It just gives people the signal that it's automated. And if it's compliant with Twitter's rules, it's okay being on the platform. The ones that are non-compliant they're already actively trying to get those off. So if a developer wants to create a bot, they would self-identify it as an automated account and link to their personal Twitter handle in the bot's profile. Ultimately, you get at the bad bots by solving for the good ones. And so it's a long tail strategy. And so here's one that I came across today. This was a cybersecurity bot, and it says on it, it's made in India and developed using Python. And it has a link to the person who developed it. And then on his Twitter stream, he talks about how he did it. And it's just interesting. I tweeted something about a virus that's coming up, and boom, the bot retweeted it.
That's a good idea. I guess a couple of questions, or one question. So each developer can apply for it and get approved, as their bot account can get approved, and then they get a bot icon on that account. Is that what I'm hearing? Does the bot icon smile?
I don't think it did.
I think it should have a smile.
Hold on, let me see if he's smiling.
Smiling
Just a
bot.
second. I might still have him up here. Cybersack. Let's see his pinned tweet. Sorry, nope, not smiling.
Yeah, they're gonna change that. It's gonna be a smiling, happy, friendly bot.
Yeah, right.
The other thing I was thinking is free promotion for bot developers. I mean,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
gives incentive to make good bots for bot developers so they get some notoriety or some not notoriety, but some publicity for their skills.
Some
Uh,
clients, yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if this new Amazon Prime show has robots in it. I don't think so because it looks like it's a fantasy adventure series. But yesterday, the first episode premiered of Wheel of Time for Prime Video. This is from Adweek's Patrick Culp. And in order to generate excitement for the new show and drum up interest in the new show, Amazon has created billboards throughout a bunch of high traffic areas. One of them is Piccadilly Circus in London. Another one, I believe, is in Times Square. But these billboards, they're installations that illustrate the adventure fantasy series Wheel of Time using three-dimensional anamorphic format to make it seem as if the characters are bursting out of the billboard towards passersby. It's pretty amazing. I got a couple of video clips of that somebody took in London of the billboard in London, and it actually does look like their characters are reaching out over the traffic. It is anamorphic. So anamorphic is you have to see it at a certain angle for the illusion to become real. There is a one of my favorite paintings called The Ambassadors. It was painted in 1533 by Hans Holbein the Younger. Love that name. And it includes an anamorphic skull that appears. It looks like it's just a weird smear on the painting when you're viewing it straight ahead. But if you come at the painting from the side, the right side, and on high, or left side on low, and view it from that angle, it becomes clear that it's a skull. And so it is a memento mori, a reminder of death that painters of that era used to include in their paintings. But that's an example of anamorphous in history. But we'll put a clip of this billboard in the show notes. It's pretty
That is
amazing.
so cool.
Yeah.
So this is also an interesting turn of events. I mean, we've talked about how so many journalists were going to Substack, and some have done quite well and some have not. And I'm a big fan of Charlie Warzel's, and Charlie Warzel used to be at the New York Times, as was Casey Newton for a while, and he was at TechCrunch, and so this week, The Atlantic launched this month, The Atlantic launched a new suite of 9 new newsletters from what the Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg described as some of America's most thoughtful, provocative, and urgent writers. And Charlie Warzel, in his newsletter Galaxy Brain, said that he was not doing badly at Substack, but that he didn't feel that he could develop his audience to the point where he was really doing great. He said he was approaching 6 figures, but the churn was big, which is exactly what Casey Newton said. And what Casey Newton said after a year on Substack was that the only thing that raised the needle was Twitter, that anything else that he did changed nothing, that Twitter caused him to get more subscribers and more views. And Charlie Warzel said the same, but he said it became a really big job to promote his newsletter as well as to write it. And we know that one well. So in his first issue, he says very little is going to change. They're going to give the writers their editorial freedom, their editorial voice, and they will also contribute to The Atlantic, which is, such a fabulous magazine anyway. So last week, Charlie Warzel took a shot at Mark Zuckerberg, and he said, what might the Facebook conversation look like if it more readily acknowledged Facebook for what it is, a vast algorithmic wasteland, infinite channels, but nothing on. So right now, the newsletters are available through the end of November for free. And then after that, only to subscribers. But I mean, there's some really extraordinary writers who are joining as bringing their newsletter into the Atlantic, and you will have to have a subscription to the Atlantic. But had you bought subscriptions to all 9 of these newsletters, you could have already bought a subscription to the Atlantic. And I would not ever let my subscription to the Atlantic go, because it has some of the best journalism that exists.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Isn't that? I mean, they're going to make, I don't know if they'll make more money, but they'll know that they're making money, and they have to do their job. They don't have to promote what they're doing. They have to just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although you still have to promote what you're doing.
Yeah. I have a couple of people I know that have gone to Substack, and one has been, I think, very successful. The other is switching from Substack to a different platform because it's not working for them. But the interesting thing about this, so the one that is working is called Purple Insider. It's by a former Vikings beat writer named Matthew Collar. He was a radio station, got let go after the pandemic when everything shut down and we didn't have sports anymore. So he pivoted and started a Substack account, started his own publication, and does a podcast.
You talked about that, I think, when he did that. Yeah.
So he has brought on additional writers now. So he has a couple of other beat writers that have covered the Vikings before. One of which is a guy named Brian Murphy, who who used to write for the Pioneer Press, the local newspaper covering the Vikings. But I've read him over the years, and he did his absolutely best article I've ever read of his this past week, where it was kind of a gonzo journalism Hunter S. Thompson trip to visit the Vikings playing in another city, and it was it was very little about football and very much about the experience. It was so good, but he wouldn't have had the freedom to do that,
Exactly.
at the newspaper, right? He had the freedom to do it in this format. So really
See,
interesting.
but what the Atlantic is saying is we want them to have the freedom to do what they
And
want.
that's where it's going to be best. That's where the best stuff comes out, right?
And the Atlantic has millions and millions of subscribers.
Yep.
So, that, and they do a fabulous job of promoting the content. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see, Molly Jong-Fast is there. There's some really well-known writers, so take a look.
Well, speaking of good journalism, I watched. I had MSNBC on last week, and happened to be half watching, and half working. And Nicole Wallace, who hosts the White House Deadline White House show, yeah, she was on, and she was doing an interview. Nicole Wallace, just for background, and if listeners don't know, is a former Republican operative. She was in George Bush's White House doing communication. She was a campaign communicator for John McCain when he ran for president. So she's a political operative. She understands politics. She also understands communications, and this is where it paid off now in her host of MSNBC. Because among all the hosts there, I like her the best. I'm a centrist. I've always considered myself a centrist Democrat. She's a centrist former Republican who's railing against what has become of her former party now. So I love her for that. And she's good. She's really good.
She's
and
a
this
really
is
good journalist.
an example of that. She held a master class on how to conduct an interview with a politician. And in this case, the politician was Chris Christie. And Chris Christie has got a book out. He's making the rounds. He is everywhere. And when somebody comes out with a book, the typical way that the media handles this is they give them an open mic, let them talk about their book, and ask a couple of questions, and that's it. And they go on their merry way and promote their book, right? Not so in this interview. So Wallace started out. Chris Christie's book is combating conspiracy theories and lies and disinformation, and he's out to save the Republican Party from itself. That's kind of the whole premise of his book. And she starts out with, I concluded that you, as sort of a post 9/11 prosecutor with all the experience about terrorism, think this, domestic terrorism is what she's referring to, is really dangerous. Is that fair? And Christie replies, oh yeah, it's bad for our party, but more importantly, it's bad for our country. And Wallace then goes, Do you agree with Christopher Wray, who says that domestic violent extremism is the greatest threat to the homeland? Christy goes, I don't know if Chris still thinks that. He testified to that in September. He did. I don't know if he's still, and again in February. I don't know if, and again in May, I think. Well, okay, and that's 3 times, Wallace says. Don't know, blah, blah, blah. So the whole interview was just like that. Follow up, follow up. She's on her game. She has all the facts at her disposal. And she's like, the other part of it was, the book is about conspiracy and lies, and you really don't take on Fox News. Why not? Have you seen Tucker
He
Carlson?
wants a job there.
Have you seen Tucker Carlson, Cheryl? Christy? No, I don't watch it. Are you aware of what he does? Not really.
He's been on his show.
You have to, you have to. We'll put the clips in the show notes so you can watch the whole thing. But yeah, he's on Tucker Carlson this week promoting his book. So don't tell me he
Jeez.
doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was just masterful the way she handled the
Oh, I
interview.
can't wait to watch that. That sounds great. So, nowhere near as great a political import, but Apple announced self-service repair this week, and they're going to make Apple parts, tools, and manuals, starting with the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 13 and above, available to individual consumers. And I went to their blog, and also Brian X. Chen did an article about what this means to you if you own an iPhone. So why it's good news, what Brian X. Chen says, it explains, is this may encourage people to maintain their product for longer, hold on to them, similar to doing regular maintenance on a car. And that has implications for reducing technology waste and helping the environment. So, that's the good news. And Apple's going to allow customers who are comfortable with completing their own repairs, which would not be me, access to Apple genuine parts and tools, and soon going to be followed after iPhone by Mac computers featuring M1 chips. And so self-service repair is going to start to be available early next year in the US, and it's going to expand to other countries throughout 2022. There is also going to be more authorized repair shops, and so now there's more than 5,000 of those. No, there's more than 5,000 Apple stores, Apple authorized, and then 2,800 independent repair providers that'll be able to do all this. And the initial phase is going to focus on the iPhone display, the battery, and the camera, and the ability for additional repairs starts to be available next year. But I mean, I have to laugh because on one of my phones, like all of a sudden the camera, every time I took a picture, all I saw was like this blur. And I went to Radio Shack for something else, and I was talking to the guy, and I said, boy, I don't know what's wrong with my camera. And he took a look at it, and he got a cloth, and he cleaned off the lens, and it was fine. So, it had, somehow got greasy. So anyway, they're gonna they have a new self-service repair store online, and it's gonna have more than 200 individual parts, and you'll be able to complete the most common repairs. So it's intended for people who have knowledge and experience like you, Dave, to repair electronic devices, and the vast majority of people are still going to go to a professional repair provider with certified technicians. But for example, when I needed a new battery in my iPhone 6, I went to Staples. In 20 minutes, I had a new battery. It wasn't in warranty anymore anyway. What the hell is the difference? But, if it had been in warranty, that would take it out. So, it's kind of an interesting move, and I like the part about helping the environment. I know you hate Apple.
That's good. I have so many things to ask you. One is Radio Shack? When were you? I mean, was this like the early 90s that you were at?
I know whenever it was one of my phones. Who knows?
So there's that. The other isn't this a result of a lawsuit that they were forced to do this?
Probably, but they didn't say so.
Yeah, of course. So there's that, and then they didn't want to do it, and John Deere, the company John Deere that makes farm agriculture equipment,
Crackers.
has the same thing. Basically, they don't want anybody uh, fixing their own stuff, and farmers are notorious for fixing their own stuff. They're very skilled at fixing their own stuff, but because of the electronics in it and the data in it, they don't want, so anyway, so they're forced to do it by a lawsuit. Probably, I'm guessing that's the case. I think I read that was the case,
I
and
wouldn't be surprised.
now they've got these toolkits that you can buy, presumably for a lot of money, to be able to fix your phone. So they're making some extra money on the side as a result of it. Why not? And then a tiny fraction of the people are actually going to be using this to fix their.
But Dave, back when I had a car, which was quite a long time ago, one morning I'm trying to go to work and the car dies and somebody pushed it into a gas station for me. And the guy said to me, "Oh, I think you're going to need a new engine in this car." And it turned out that I had dirty spark plugs. I mean,
Somebody just
and
wiped off the headphone, the wiped off the headlights, and you're good to go.
no, it wasn't headlights, but it was the spark plug. So that just pissed me off so that I went and I took an adult education course and I learned how to change my oil and my spark plugs. And, I could even change brake shoes, although I would never dare to do that because that's just too dangerous. But, you can't do that now. Your
Yeah,
car's a computer.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I was like, that's just one too many times that somebody did something like that. And so I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
And you should be able to change the battery in your phone at the least.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely, absolutely. Yep,
yeah.
yeah.
So I know you're not an Apple fan.
Well, I am, and I have a love-hate relationship with them. So,
We all do.
um, this is amazing. This is from Yanis Constantinides. I I'm sure I butchered his name. Founder of No Mint, which is an animation production company. I found his post on LinkedIn where he shared an animation that his company had done for the World Wildlife Federation. And it was in response to the global environmental summit that was just recently conducted. I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically a piece of video that was urging the leaders, the elite, to act in favor of the climate. Anyway, on his LinkedIn profile, sharing the video, and I'll explain it in a little bit, he said, the idea is simple. Let's use the natural melting properties of ice to create a stop-motion film that melts away, highlighting the urgency of the Arctic problem. But fittingly, once ice starts melting, you have no control over it, making it almost impossible to create a stop-motion film of this scale, which of course requires time between each shot. It was especially hard emotionally, as with every melted sculpture and ruined shot, we were being reminded of the devastating issue at hand and how easy it is to underestimate it.
Wow.
Yeah. The video features a polar bear made out of ice traversing a polar landscape that as it melts away. And the ending, it ends with a bear stranded on a bit of ice surrounded by water. And then the voiceover says, once Arctic ice melts, you can't get it back. We can't negotiate the melting point of ice. World leaders must take immediate action to keep 1.5 alive, which is 1.5 Celsius, which I don't know specifically, but that's a reference to one of the goals of the summit. So we'll put that in the show notes for people to watch. It's an amazing bit of animation.
Wow. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So I am out of good news. If you have more.
I got one quick one here. This is from
Okay.
Spotify. They are in a post from Spotify's newsroom. They say that they found that their users want the option to easily switch between audio and video, depending on where they
Hey.
are, what they're doing, and what they're enjoying. So they are rolling out the ability for podcasters to share video podcasts. So Spotify users will see a lot more video podcasts as we open up access for creators to begin publishing video to Spotify. In episode 258, we discussed their acquisition, Spotify's acquisition of Anchor, which is a podcasting platform. So that's the tool that Spotify will be letting creators use to seamlessly upload their video content and publish it to Spotify. They're starting to roll it out with high name publishers. So you and I will not be part of that rollout, but eventually I expect that'll go out to everyone.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I like to watch them. I really do.
Mm,
I like to see who's talking. So on to bad news.
yes.
Well, this is, TikTok is known for dangerous and sometimes even fatal challenges and hoaxes. And, they've just done a global research study to learn how teens view TikTok challenges. And then they issued this report about what they're going to do about it. And then they have an updated safety center. And basically, this is from Sarah Perez, and basically not much is going to change. We talked about in, I think it was episode 261, we talked about the, before that, the most recent one was the Slap a Teacher challenge and the Destroy School Property challenge. Those were in October. And, now legislation is looming, and so they released this result of their research into the viral challenges, and they denied in October that the Slap a Teacher dare was a TikTok trend, and very clearly it was. And then after a child died from trying the blackout challenge, in which you held your breath until you passed out, TikTok released a statement saying that they found no evidence that any such challenge existed. And they repeated that claim in front of the Senate at a hearing devoted to the topic of minor safety on social platforms. And Senator Blackburn, Republican Tennessee, told TikTok's representatives that her staff found the pass out videos along with lots of other disturbing content. So this survey that they did, an outside firm did it, and it surveyed more than 10,000 teens, parents, and teachers in multiple countries all over the world. And the independent agency's report says young people's brains are still developing, and sometimes they like to test themselves by doing risky or dangerous acts. Like, okay, now tell us something we didn't know. So the study found that most teens aren't participating in the most dangerous challenges. Only 21% of the people of the teens in the study are participating in the challenges. Only 2% were in the ones that were considered risky, and an even smaller 0.3% took part in challenges that they thought were really dangerous. So we talked about the milk crate challenge in episode 361. That was the one where you made a set of stairs, where you kind of made a mountain out of milk crates, and then you tried to walk up one side and down the other. And in one video, which we had in the show notes, this guy says, "We're going to break our legs today." And this was during the pandemic, and doctors were pleading, like, don't do this. Our emergency rooms are full of COVID patients. We can't be taking your broken legs and arms and heads, And so the company announced that it's adding this safety center, which essentially is a help doc and with some revised text. And it's not going to solve the problem. The problem is endemic. It's basically one of content moderation, and also it's the very nature of social media for stuff to spread. And so now they say they're going to moderate content, which, as Sarah Perez points out, is something we thought they were doing all along. So not much change there. And that hence you called it meh, because it is.
Yeah, well, they denied in front of Congress the fact that the things that were happening were actually happening.
Yeah.
This is how industry does: lie, deny, and obfuscate. And this next story illustrates that it's been happening for a long, long time. This is from The Guardian, which published some selected examples by some academic researchers, two academic researchers named Jeffrey Supran and Naomi Orozquez. And this is, disinformation is not a new phenomenon. This is about the fossil fuel industry. And so it has perpetrated, as most of us know, a multi-decade, multi-billion-dollar disinformation and propaganda campaign lobbying to deny climate action. And the whole point is to confuse the public and policymakers about the crisis. So they go from the article includes examples of advertising that is doing just that, from big oil from 1962 to present. In 1962, the industry was leaning into glacier melt. So Humble Oil, which is now ExxonMobil, had a 1962 advertisement touting, quote, "Each day Humble supplies enough energy to melt 7 million tons of glacier!"
Oh my God.
Exclamation point. Yay! 3 years earlier, in 1959, the oil industry had been warned that burning fossil fuels could lead to global heating, sufficient, quote unquote, sufficient to melt the ice cap and submerge New York, end quote. So they used that information to tout how great it was that they were melting the world. But their knowledge only grew in 1979. In internal Exxon study warned that dramatic environmental effects before 2050, and by the late 1970s, global warming was no longer speculative, according to an Exxon scientist. 1991. There's advertising or promotions saying that global warming is just a theory. So there's Informed Citizens for the Environment. There's a front group of the coal and utility companies that announced in ads, "Doomsday is canceled," and asked, "Who told you the Earth was warming? ... Chicken Little? Question mark."
God.
And they complained about weak evidence and non-existent proof, inaccurate climate models, and asserted that physics was open to debate. This one in particular, the best predictors of fossil fuel industry ad spending are media scrutiny and political activity. Today, their scaremongering has gone digital, with huge spikes in television, social media ad spending by oil lobbies each time climate regulations loom. In the run-up to the 2018 to 2020 midterm presidential elections, Exxon spent more on political advertising on Facebook and Instagram than any other company in the world except Facebook itself.
And this is all about climate?
This is all about climate.
Wow.
From 2004 to 2006, BP, Beyond Petroleum with their green logo, campaign introduced the very idea of a carbon footprint. So that phrase, carbon footprint, was invented by BP. It has become, of course, a buzzword that people use all the time. But the point of it was to shift blame. It's not our fault, the oil industry. It's your fault. So the target of the campaign is routine human activities, lifestyle choices, individuals, the average American household, that, you have to know what your carbon footprint is, take responsibility for our pollution to clean up the world. So very fascinating. We'll put a link to this article in the show notes so you can actually see the advertisements too.
Well, apropos this, I have something in politics that's related to it, but okay. I don't, that was my only bad news.
I got one quick one, another one. This is a from Daily Infographic. Is actually a chart by allsides.com, which is an organization that purports to chart media bias.
I see that. Yeah, I look at
Yeah,
that.
and so they've got a chart with columns. The center column is a C, standing for centrist, or I guess. And then on the left side, there's two left-hand columns for liberal. And on the right side, there's two right-hand columns for conservative or Republican. And it's generally accurate, but
More or less, yeah.
some of this is in the eye of the beholder. But some of this also is. They've got on the right side, they've got Breitbart, Daily Caller, Fox News, Newsmax, and O American Network, or whatever the hell it's called.
And the New
Some of
York
these are
Post,
just
that rag.
Some of these are just propaganda. I mean, just fascist propaganda. It should not even be in a conservative column, and should be in an F column for fascism. And
Well,
on
they're
the
not
left-hand side,
media, you know?
the left-hand side that has equivalents where they're not really based in fact or anything, not nearly as many, but yeah. Anyway,
The New Yorker is there. Mother Jones is there.
well, the
Come on.
New Yorker on the left-hand side, that's more opinion, but also, New Yorker was leading the charge for the war with Iraq. So that's not really a liberal thing that, So you can quibble a little bit, but
I like to quibble.
yeah.
Okay, so I got a smile for you.
All right.
I don't know if we should laugh or throw up, though. There's a pizzeria called Macy's Place Pizzeria, and they have Thanksgiving pizza, and it's topped with turkeys, mashed potatoes, stuffing, gravy, and corn, plus a cranberry drizzle. And I will put a picture of it in the show notes. And if you happen to eat it, let me know how well you fared.
I'm never gonna try it ever in my entire life. No,
Is that the funniest thing you
awful.
ever heard? I mean, who thought of that?
I'm not a big cranberry sauce fan. Um,
Oh, we fight about that every year. Who likes the one in the can and who likes the fresh one?
well, I don't really like them at all, but I did hear one of our clients was talking about a cranberry jalapeno recipe, which
Oh, that sounds
that
good.
sounds fascinating. I definitely
Yeah,
want to try that. So
that sounds great. So does that bring us to shiny objects?
it does. What do you
I
got?
got some. Well, this is so cool. You know, the first time I heard about this was years and years ago. I was at a Google event and they were talking about Google Lens. And here it is. Now you can use your camera, your phone's camera, to point it at something and it will tell you what it is and give you like all kinds of information. So I just pointed it at the plant I'm sitting next to and immediately identified it as a spathiphyllum, and it gave me all kinds of information about it and how to take care of it. And it's available on Android and iPhone now, and it's just so cool. You know, I pointed it at my chair and it gave me like all the things about the chair. It just, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I remember that. I used it back when I had an Android. I remember using it. It was pretty good. I imagine it's gotten a lot better, and I didn't know it was available on iPhone now, so
Yeah, it's so
I'll have to
cool.
try
It's
that.
just one of the options in your search. There's a little camera in there. You know, there's the
Oh, it's for
microphone
the
and the
Google
camera's
app.
next.
It's not
Yeah,
a
the app.
separate app,
It's the app. It's not online.
but it's the Google app. It's not a separate Google Lens app.
Google app. It's part of Google
Okay.
search now.
All right, cool.
Yeah. Isn't
Cool.
that cool?
Yeah. So this is something that our agency has started using. We've got an agency account, and it's pretty amazing. It's called Qwoted, and it is help. It's basically help a reporter out on steroids. So it is a marketplace basically of matching expert sources with news media. They're looking for an expert source for their stories, but this one, what you do is you fill out your personal profile. So if you're a media, it's always free. For agencies, they're obviously charging, but from the agency side, you fill out your profile, and if you have particular expertise, you could potentially become a source for a story. That's how I've used help a reporter out. But beneath your own individual profile, then you can put in profiles of your clients as well. And so you can highlight their expertise and reporters looking for a particular expertise so it may be for your client it's got a matching algorithm. So rather than help a reporter out, you're scanning the headlines that reporters are looking for every day. This one looks at matching expertise using an algorithm and pops up alerts for media that are looking for that particular expertise. The media member would then go through you as the representative of your client to arrange for an interview or whatever. But it's pretty cool.
Very cool. How much does it cost?
I don't know. It's the agency's paying for it, so I don't know. But
Ah.
it's free for media.
Yeah. Okay. So Google Meet is rolling out a new immersive backgrounds, and they have subtle animation in them and different versions for different weather: sunny, rainy, showery, snowy. Three of the backgrounds are available to anyone, and then there's 5 additional ones that are available, and color filters too, that are for Google Workspace and G Suite customers, excluding Google Workspace individual customers for some bizarre reason. But I used Google Meet with someone who was hard of hearing, and we did it because it has closed captions, and I don't see that on any other platform. And that's a pretty important thing that really ought to be on Zoom and everywhere else for people
Yep.
who need it.
Yep.
It's just really,
That just came up in a conversation at our agency with a virtual event that we're looking for platforms, and one of the requests was, does it have closed captioning in it?
yeah,
And
it's hard to come by.
yeah.
Yeah, it really is. But now you can have up to 500 people in a Google Meet, so you could
Oh,
actually do an event there. But one other one that I came across that is kind of interesting. This is for LinkedIn, and it's called Shield, and it's for deeper tracking of LinkedIn analytics and of your personal LinkedIn profile. So it measures content and profile performance in one dashboard. And it goes pretty deep in. So it has content metrics, real-time stats, audience demographics, and several other things. And you can use it for you, for your team, or for your agency. For an individual, it's $6 a month, which is interesting.
Yeah, I
So
definitely will check that out.
I have a project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on Zev Godkin's podcast talking about, guess what? Marketing.
What's I assume Zev Godkin's podcast is about marketing. What's the name
Yeah,
of
it
the
is. I believe it's called Zev Godkin's
podcast?
podcast.
There we go. Nice branding there.
Oh, no, it's called Zev Audio Zones. That's what it's called, Zev Audio Zones podcast. And he's interviewed some pretty interesting people. I'm not sure I'm one of them, but there we are.
Oh, of course
It
you are.
has
Wait till-
the
listen.
weirdest video of him I've ever seen. But so he has a video version of it, but I highly recommend you don't watch that, that you listen to the audio. Anyway, it was fun. He was a good interviewer. So talking about climate change and all of that, this is my political one. The Lincoln Project did a video on YouTube this week in the Republican Party, and they said it's not the onion, it's the mind-controlled media machine that is what remains of the Republican Party. And the headlines include, climate change is actually good for human health, men withering and dying from vicious attacks on masculinity, the My Pillow Man hires somebody to yell out his name this week, and this was a good one. Professors are the enemy, and the Department of Education is on the outs. And also, this is probably my favorite, Big Bird is a pervert. And the reason that Big Bird is a pervert is that he he's been hawking vaccines since the 60s. Hello.
So that came about because of Ted Cruz attacking Big Bird. There is in the wake of that, somebody created a bunch of different Twitter accounts of Big Bird for governor of Texas, I think. And I can't remember if it's president or governor of Texas, but there's Big Bird. There's Grover is like the campaign manager. They've gotten all of the Sesame Street characters, and they're all active, and they're all talking about the campaign, and it's brilliant. It's really
Oh my
good.
God. I mean, the guy who said this on Fox, he said more people die of cold than heat. So obviously climate change is really just no big deal. Yeah, well, the cold is part of it. Duh. I mean, really. Anyway, you have to watch the video because it's just clips of them saying these outrageous things, and it curls your hair, honestly.
Yeah. All right. So, pro tip. This is from HubSpot's Mike Volpe, who discusses how to revive an old blog article for SEO purposes. And these are some good tips. The whole article is really good. And we'll put a link to it for people to read the entire article. But he quotes John Bonini, who's the director of marketing at DataBox, about how to decide if an old blog post is worth updating. to gain some extra search traffic from it. And this is one of the things that I look for in when I work on a new site or a site that's been around for a while and has been publishing and they need some SEO help, is what is the content that we already have that we can upgrade to get more traffic. So one of his the first one is biggest losers, and he says that is content that's lost organic traffic at a high volume over the last three to 6 months. So, for example, you may have a post that is performing really well in organic search, and it has been for a long time, but then it starts to lose traffic. And what can you do to boost that so that it continues to earn traffic? I had a post I did years ago on tools for Twitter tools for analyzing your reach. I can't remember what it was, but it was just a list of tools, and it performed for years after I published it. Ultimately, it fell off the edge, and nobody cares about that anymore. So, but that's the kind of thing. The other thing is what he calls the almost famous, and that's content that's currently ranking on page 2. So that's stuff that's close to being on page 1. So what can you do to optimize that and update that to nudge it over the page 2 limit and get them back and get it into page 1, so you're going to get more visibility and more traffic. And then the other one is nobodies, which is content that's targeting high intent, high volume keywords that are not ranking at all. And the idea with that is you may be targeting keywords that are too difficult to get visibility for because there's too many people searching for it. There's too much competition. So re-examine that page and see if there's different keywords, related keywords, but lower volume, lower competition keywords that you can optimize for that page that will help it rank and gain you more search. So a couple of pro tips from John Benini.
That sounds great. So weekly numbers, Dave.
Yeah, so Pew Research always has great stuff, and they recently came out with a survey of illustrating that Americans are losing interest in having kids. This is fascinating.
Really?
Yep. So some of 44% of non-parent parents aged 18 to 49 say it's not too or not at all likely that they will have children someday. 44% of people who don't have children, 18 to 44, say it's not likely they're going to have children someday. That's an increase of 7 percentage points from the 37% who said the same in 2018. And then 74% of adults younger than 50 who are already parents, who already have children, say they are unlikely to have more kids, which is virtually unchanged from 2018. Most of the reasons for why non-parents don't want to have children is they just don't want to have children. That's the top reason that they give. 56% say that. Among the other ones are medical reasons, financial reasons, no partner, age, state of the world, 9%, climate change, the environment, 5%. And I'm like, okay, so I don't have children. It's not that I never wanted children, but I did think so. One, shouldn't bring children into the world if you can't afford them, financial reasons. The state of the world, it's almost child abuse to bring children into this world the way it is, right?
You could argue that, but there have been other horrible times in history, and people were born and had nice lives
going on. The planet's dying. Everything's broken. Everybody's at everybody's throat.
The funny thing is, like this spring in New York, there were so many pregnant people walking around, and now there's babies all over the place. So it appears that there was a pretty big baby boom during the pandemic. So who knows? Well, everybody was locked up at home. What else are you going to do, Can't watch Netflix forever. So anyway, that brings us to the end of episode 367 of the Beyond Social Media Show. To find us, just search for Beyond Social Media Show, and links to everything we talked about today with the original links to the original articles. The videos that we discussed are at beyondsocialmediashow.com/367. And while you're there, subscribe to our newsletter. So I'm here with David Erickson, and David is on Twitter as D Erickson, and D Erickson, and he's on Instagram as DE Erickson, Dear Erickson, as I like to think of it. And he's on YouTube as eStrategy, and he's at e-strategyblog.com, where he is literally a content machine. He blows my mind. And I'm BL Achman. I'm What's Next on Twitter. My blog, my very neglected blog is What's Next Blog. My YouTube channel is What's Next Blog. I have a website at blachman.com. And in order to find us, all you do is you look for Beyond Social Media Show. On Twitter, we are at BS Media Show. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts, and you can tell your smart speaker, play Beyond Social Media Show. And we'll be back.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.